Hello everybody, welcome to the F4 Spanish Championship season finale 2024. We're here at the Circuit de Catalunya in Montmeló, just outside the beautiful Olympic city of Barcelona. What a magnificent race weekend it is set to be, with 3 races still to go in this championship fight and 3 drivers in the fight for the title: Chiano Alazzari, Mattia Colnaghi and Maciej Gladys. It's set to be a very exciting battle over the course of the 3 races. Of course, the Spanish motor racing community comes into this one with a little bit of a somber note after the recent events that have taken place over in the city of Valencia that, of course, hosted races in the F4 Spanish Championship a few weeks ago. And many members of the Spanish motor racing community are, of course, sending our love and best wishes to the residents of the area and, of course, all of the competitors competing this weekend are going to have very much the thoughts of all of the people of the city of Valencia. The F4 Spanish Championship themselves have been putting some bits and pieces together to try and assist. Last week, the F4 Spanish Championship team truck was actually on the ground, on the front at Valencia, trying to assist in getting shelter and safety to as many of the local residents in Valencia as humanly possible. And of course, we have also started a crowdfunding bid, which you can find out more about on our social media pages for the F4 Spanish Championship. And of course, as a result of that, all of the competitors have obviously got themselves a very tough weekend ahead, with the thoughts very much in the process and the procedures of the recent events. But as is always the way in motorsport, the show must go on, and all of the teams, despite the ones being affected by the difficulties, are still very much in the spirit to race. And you can see there on the screen the hashtag Fuerza Valencia, and that's one that we would very much encourage you to share with your nearest and dearest. The 15-second board goes out here at the starting point as we get ourselves ready for a very exciting battle, the first of 3 races here this weekend. And it's set to be a really exciting and intriguing situation for all of the drivers as we get ourselves ready for the show. And there's not many races left of this magnificent 2024 season. There's definitely going to be some intriguing battles for all of the contenders as we get ourselves up to speed. Pole position going the way of Mattia Colnaghi definitely gives us an interesting battle, and it means that the championship fight will be going to tomorrow, whatever happens now. It is definitely going to be a fantastic and consistent fight that gets us all the way to the season conclusion. So we are quite excited with the 3 races that are set to come. Here's the grid. Mattia Colnaghi and Ernesto Rivera on the front row of the starting grid. From Griffin Peebles and Juan Cota, then Chiano Alazzari and the British driver Nathan Tighe lining up in 6th on the grid. Enzo Tambanichku lines up alongside Jan Piotrowski, with Andres Cardenas and James Igozzi rounding up the top 10. Then the American driver Hudson Schwartz alongside the Dutchman René Lammers, Christopher Elfagali and Lucas Flusha. From Maciej Gladys down in 15th, the British driver Chase Fernandez from Tim Gerhards and Ari Bansal, the Indian for Rodin. Then Gabriel Gomez and Matas Reiber, Ariel Elkin and Lenny Reeds from Renault Frankfurt, and Adam Hideg, the Hungarian for Cram. 13th row of the grid for Adam Alazzari, the younger brother of Chiano, Peter Buzinelos, and then Francisco Macedo and Oscar Wirtz, the Austrian, from Christian Cantu, and Joan Ciconti, the Australian driver. Then Victor Dobzhansky from Theodor Bodenstein, Lorenzo Castillo, Rafael Terán, and Alexander Jacobi filling out the 35-car grid. It'll be a fascinating battle here, and of course, this one is going to be an exciting one for all of the contenders out there, because we, of course, go into this one very well aware of the fact that this is going to be the charge forward for so many of our competitors. The championship battle is, of course, going to be decided this weekend in earnest. So we should see a really compelling championship fight. But for Mattia Colnaghi lining up in pole position, it definitely gives him a lot of aces coming into this one. From Ernesto Rivera, Chiano Alazzari lining up 5th on the grid, definitely still a fight for him. He has a championship lead coming into this one, of course, but he's going to have an opportunity knocking here. And then, of course, we have Maciej Gladys, the Polish driver, the 3rd contender in the championship fight and one of the leading rookies of the season. He finds himself down in 15th on the starting grid, but that doesn't mean he won't be able to charge forward. The Polish driver is already a race winner this year, as we just saw Christopher Elfagali working his way through there in the mix. So great to see everybody just getting themselves geared up, ready for an exciting show. But this is not going to be easy to predict at all. The first of 3 races in the F4 Spanish Championship this weekend here at Barcelona. on the Circuit de Catalunya, the home of the Spanish Grand Prix since 1991. And a race circuit that has definitely provided so many great battles and drama. And of course, last year, it was the scene of the championship finale for the F4 Spanish Championship. It's great to be back here once again. And it looks as though we're going to be in for another spectacular battle as the championships conclude. We'll also have Euro Cup 3 a little bit later as well. But there are 3 Spanish F4 races over the weekend. And this is one of the 2 longest races of the weekend. 30 minutes plus the additional lap. That means the top 10 drivers will score points. 25 for the winner, 18 for second, and so on, down to 1 point for 10th position. It's definitely going to be a tall order for Maciej Gladish to score points from 15th on the grid. Even for Chiano Alazzari to score decent points from 5th. Mattia Colnaghi can really get that points gap down if he keeps his wits about him. But we go into the first of 3 races. It's going to be a fabulous battle out there. Jake Sanson with you in the commentary box as we gear ourselves up for the first of 3 F4 Spanish Championship races this weekend. And it will be a competitive race that we will get into the battle now. Green flags at the back of the grid. The 5 lights come on. And we are going to be racing at the Circuit de Catalunya. It's a good start from Mattia Colnaghi, not a bad one from Ernesto de Vera, as Colnaghi spreads right across the course. Not a lot of room for Juan Cota as he ends up dropping back. So it's Griffin Peebles that charges forward. Chiano Alazzari through into 3rd position. Juan Cota is going to be swamped round the outside into turn 1. As round the outside, that is Jan Piotrowski going wheel to wheel with Nathan Ty and Enzo Tarvanichgul as all 3 of them go off the racetrack, trying to recover without incident, as so many cars go out wide and manage to get back onto the circuit again. But it's perfect for Mattia Colnaghi. He starts well. Chiano Alazzari, it couldn't be a better start for the boy from Dubai as he works his way into 2nd position. Excellent performance from him and an amazing launch forward. So Chiano Alazzari has worked his way into 2nd place off the starting line. It couldn't be better from 5th on the grid. So a great start, and already you can see some good challenges forward. Everybody trying to calm themselves down in the first couple of laps of racing. Not a bad run from Enzo Tarvanichgul, running in front of the Campos driver Nathan Ty, in front of Andres Cardenas, the Peruvian. So already some good battles out there for the contenders as we go to the far side of the course. There's yellow flags already. It's Chiano Alazzari has a look on the inside of Mattia Colnaghi on the very first lap of this race. He's clear, he's determined, he wants to get this title run finished as early as possible, and he wants to pull some moves on his championship contender. But there's wheel-to-wheel battles all the way down the field at the moment. Just 11 points separating Mattia Colnaghi and Chiano Alazzari going into this race after the pole position for Colnaghi. But Chiano Alazzari has definitely got some of that pressure off him. Safety car, safety car. Right, so we've got an issue there further down the field, trying to make out who it is, but certainly we don't seem to have Gabriel Gomez coming through. And I think Rafael Terán has also had a problem, so we'll have to wait until the cameras pick it up for us. But we've certainly got a safety car out on the circuit at the moment. And certainly the Colombian, oh, there is Gabriel Gomez, the Brazilian who races under an Italian license this year for the Thibaut Courtois racing team. So it's game over for him, and he's embedded in the gravel. That looks like it might be in Sector 2 at the chicane where Mika Hakkinen famously broke down on the last lap of the 2001 Spanish Grand Prix. So I have a feeling that that's where his race has come to an end, and it certainly looks as though Rafael Terán has had a similar problem. So big difficulties there, but certainly it's a very dramatic start to the race. But what a start for Chiano Alazzari. Exactly what he needed coming into this race. A perfect tonic to move up from 5th position on the grid to 2nd. Ernesto de Vera in 3rd place. And then Griffin Peebles in P4 from Jan Piotrowski, Juan Cota, Enzo Tarvanichgul and Nathan Ty. And then we have Andres Cardenas and René Lammers in the top 10 positions. So we're going to have a look at a replay, I think, of the initial start. Let's have a look at it. Well, Mattia Colnaghi didn't get the most fantastic of starts initially, but it was Juan Cota, look, he got crowded out at the start and onto the grass. That was perfect news for Chiano Alazzari, who was able to get alongside Griffin Peebles. And Ernesto de Vera was so busy focusing on Cota, he completely missed that the MP twins were going ahead. And Chiano Alazzari able to get through. So nicely done then from the young man from the United Arab Emirates. Weaving from side to side, trying to get heat still to stay in the tyres. They were still in the warm-up phase of the tyres, of course, because they're only on the first lap of the race. But for Mattia Kolnagi, having his main championship rival directly behind him isn't going to do him many favours. He'll gain a few points for sure. He'll gain 7 points on him by taking the victory, but he would really like to have increased the lead by even more than that. So the tables are not quite going to turn in Mattia Kolnagi's favour just yet, but certainly that 11-point gap is going to go down to a 4-point gap if it stays like this. Chiara Malazzari can, of course, get ahead of Mattia Kolnagi and increase the lead from 11 points to 18 points. So it's going to be a very close run thing as they battle away for positions. But it's going to be really exciting to see how it all progresses. So let's see how it all continues on as they go round again. So obviously, Gabriel Gomez's car fairly embedded. So it's going to be another lap behind the safety car on this occasion. Let's go through the field in a bit more detail. Kolnagi ahead of Chiara Malazzari, then Ernesto de Vera from Griffin Peebles. Jan Brashrovsky, who somehow survived the side-by-side going into turn 1. He's now in 5th ahead of Juan Cota. Enzo Tambadicco and Nathan Tai had to back out of that first corner then and slot in behind the Spanish driver. Then it is Andres Cardenas in 9th ahead of René Lammers, looking good for the final point. Lucas Flusha in 11th position. Then in 12th is Maciej Gladish. So the Polish driver has already made up 3 places. So great to see Maciej Gladish really starting to take control of his championship fight again. So I would suspect that he's actually made a pretty decent getaway and is going to have a little bit more pace underneath him. Qualifying has never really been Maciej Gladish's strong point, but in race trim, both in karting and in Formula 4, he has been mighty. So this is a good opportunity really for Maciej Gladish to continue his form. 13th is James Agozzi in front of Hudson Schwartz, the American driver. Chris Selfagali doing a fair job off the start, up to 15th place, the Lebanese driver, ahead of Tim Gerhards and Lenny Rietz. And then it is Adam Hideg in front of Matas Reiber. Chase Fernandez doing a fair job, getting a second go in Spanish F4, the British driver, ahead of Ariel Elkin, the Israeli. And then Peter Buzinelos ahead of Renaud Francout and Adam Alazzari. Francisco Macedo ahead of Oscar Wirtz, who is the younger brother of Charlie, and of course the second son of Formula 1 driver and Le Mans 24-hour winner Alexander Wirtz. Lorenzo Castillo and Christian Cantu. And then Joan Ciconti, the Australian, ahead of Alexander Jacobi. And then Aryan Bansal, the Indian driver, ahead of Bolenstein and Dobzhansky, with only 2 retirements from the race so far, namely Rafael Terán and Gabriel Gomez. Safety car in this lap. Terán has returned to the circuit, I should point out. He's just dropped to the back of the field, but Gomez has retired. So we have just 1 retirement from the race, but the safety car will come in this lap. There are the lights going out. So now it's up to Mattia Kolnagi to back up the pack. Chiara Malazzari is pretty good at restarts. We've seen it several times over the course of the Spanish F4 Championship 2024. So how he deals with Mattia Kolnagi's restart could actually play dividends in terms of how the championship fight continues to progress. But it is going to be really, really close. 23 minutes left of the race, plus the additional lap, of course. 25 points up for grabs in this race. When is Mattia Kolnagi going to drop the hammer and charge away from Chiara Malazzari? It's all got to be tactical as he comes off the turn. Wait for the charge to go. They're not using the new Formula 1 chicane complex anymore. They're just going to charge around the right sweeper and back down the hill. Here we go. Mattia Kolnagi has dropped the hammer. He's going to go for it now. Out of the final turn. Great to see them using the faster configuration of the 3rd and final sector of the race. And it's green, 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 green once again here at Catalonia. And immediately, Chiara Malazzari has made a good charge forward. He's going to be going wheel to wheel with Mattia Kolnagi down to the first corner. Alazzari can really put the Italian under pressure. It's Kolnagi that has a lot to lose. As Alazzari charges into the first corner, he's going to get level with Kolnagi. So too is Peebles on Rivera as they drift out wide. Peebles is going to have to take the escape route and then rejoin, but Alazzari is putting Kolnagi under massive pressure. Peebles recovers in 3rd, but look at Chiara Malazzari. Alazzari has got really strong pace on this restart. Griffin Peebles having to watch as Ernesto Rivera goes round the outside of him, and he had to give best after gaining a little bit of time going off on the escape route. So he has to let Ernesto Rivera go. Alazzari tries again. Full commitment on Mattia Kolnagi. Side by side from the youngster from the United Arab Emirates. He's not going to be conservative. He's not going to hang back. He's going to go full aggression, full send. Mattia Kolnagi up the hill. Chiara Malazari putting him under big pressure on this, that. I'm sure that his father, Karim Malazari, is going to be bouncing up and down like a kid at Christmas, watching his boy fighting for the victory with full guns blazing. He's been preparing for this weekend with some autocross in his native Dubai. And it certainly seems to have prepared him for anything. As up on the inside, that is Jan Paszczowski trying to get on the inside of Griffin Peebles to get into fourth position. Kota in P6 from Ty, who's got ahead of Time van Inchkill, and then Cardenas and Flusha with Gladish now 11th. So a couple of positions lost then. But it's certainly great news for Maciej Gladish, who's just one place away from scoring championship points. His slender hook on the title is still alive and kicking for the moment. Here comes Alazari down the straight once again. Mattia Kolnagi keeping one eye on the road ahead and one eye on the mirrors. He can't afford to swerve and weave too many times because Chiara Malazari and the MP team will be prepared for him in the steward's office later. You can protect your line once, you can't do it too many times. And Chiara Malazari swarming all over the back of Mattia Kolnagi as the two drivers fight for the race victory. And of course, ultimately the championship as well. Alazari wants to transform this race from an 11-point gap in the championship to an 18-point gap. But Mattia Kolnagi, if he stays where he is, will drop the gap from 11 points to 4. So he really wants to maintain this lead over Chiara Malazari. Cutting the championship lead in more than half will be exactly what Kolnagi needs going into tomorrow. Alazari determined to keep the psychological upper hand as Griffin Peebles desperately tries to protect from Jan Paszczowski and Juan Kota. Through the left, up the hill, through the right flick, and watch out for Nathan Ty as well. The Campos youngster from Great Britain has an opportunity to surge his way forward. One of two Brits in this race. The other is Chase Fernandez, who sadly has now dropped out of the top 20. So Fernandez has clearly had an issue somewhere. He has actually gone off the road, and so too has René Lammers. René Lammers is no longer in the points. We didn't see what happened to the Dutchman, but René Lammers has dropped out of the top 10. That's how Maciej Gladish got into 11th place then, and how Lucas Flusha now finds himself in the points once more. So disastrous consequences then for René Lammers and also for Chase Fernandez down the order. Looks as though there's also been some difficulties for a couple of other drivers in the field. Renault Franco's lost a couple of positions. Right, here we go again. Chiara Malazari riding the crest of the wave over the top of the crest on the main straight. Can he charge in and go for the move here on Mattia Kolnagi? He's trying to distract the Italian and make him make the mistake. Both MP Motorsport drivers, technically speaking, although Kolnagi is part of the KCL satellite team, but they are both MP drivers. Mattia Kolnagi racing in the colours of the All-Road Management Brigade. Chiara Malazari in the traditional MP orange. As Enzo Time van Inchkill has been battling away with Andres Cardenas. Cardenas got ahead. Time van Inchkill has returned the favour and taken back the place again in the first sector. Chiara Malazari is not prepared to let Mattia Kolnagi get away with a race victory scot-free. He knows that if he gets ahead, he can increase the gap from 11 to 18 rather than see it decrease from 11 to 4. So it's very important. He's got to try and take control of this once again. Opportunity still knocking for all the contenders. Is there a chance to move this way further forward? But Chiara Malazari hunting down Mattia Kolnagi all over the place at the moment, just trying to find that little bit of extra pace in the car. But Chiara Malazari, very much the match for Mattia Kolnagi. So let's see how it continues. Up the hill and dropping down the crest again. This is where you've got a lot of pressure on the shoulders of Chiara Malazari and Mattia Kolnagi. They'll both want to outfox each other as Ernesto Rivera has got a little bit of breathing space now between himself and Griffin Peebles. Then Paszczowski, Kota, Ty, Time van Inchkill, Cardenas, Flusha and Maciej Gladish desperately trying to get himself back into the points. He's already made up 4 places. A great charge forward from the pole so far. But with 16.5 minutes plus the additional lap by the time we've sorted it all out, it's going to be a really tough mission for him to get far enough into the points to keep his championship hopes alive. He's still got to do the best he can. He's giving it everything he's got. All 3 of the championship contenders having an amazing race so far. Kolnagi leading, Alazari up from 5th on the grid to 2nd, and Maciej Gladish getting himself back into contention again from 15th on the grid to 11th. He still needs to get into the points, but it's a great start to his campaign. Griffin Peebles, the Australian, the Formula Winter Series champion, hustling the Mexican Ernesto Rivera, hoping for a little bit more. It will be a tough race battle as they continue to make progress and move forward. But there's a lot still to do, a lot of battles still to come. Looking very good so far. Through the right-hander. Pushing hard as they continue the charge forward. It's really going to be an interesting challenge forward now as they continue to challenge each other. Just looking for that little bit of extra pace. Now we're getting into the phase of the race now where everybody's settling in with the tyres. So obviously I would suspect that everybody is continuing to get those tyres up to speed. A really good question coming in from Chap Toxic on the YouTube stream. Why is this considered the Spanish Championship if it's all international drivers? That's actually a fairly considered question because the F4 Spanish Championship doesn't appear to actually have that many Spanish drivers compared to all the international talent that's on the grid. I should point out the reason it is the F4 Spanish Championship is because this is the nation where the championship is based. Pretty much every round of this year's championship has been in Spain. There have been, obviously, in the sister championship in Eurocup 3, a couple of trips elsewhere. We've been to Spa and we've been to Zandvoort and a couple of other places elsewhere, including, of course, Portimao in Portugal. But because the championship is based in Spain, it is the F4 Spanish Championship. But it's one of two F4 championships where pretty much anybody who's got a decent race budget underneath them that wants to race in a competitive F4 championship competes in the full-time season. The other, of course, being the Italian. The third of those used to be the F4 ADAC Championship, which was the national championship of Germany. But since that sadly folded, that is no longer a championship of consideration. Well, Karim Amianouni wants to know who the rookies are in the field. Well, we've got several of them, and Srihari Desai wants to know who the newcomers are. We've got a couple of new faces this weekend. Hudson Schwartz has crept in and is there in the midfield. We've also got Ayan Bansal, the Indian talent, coming in. Bodenstein is one of the new drivers in the mix as well. But up at the sharp end of the field, we've actually got a rookie leading the way. If you look at the graphic to your left, you'll actually be able to see the numbers on your screen that are in orange on the graphic. They are all rookies. So everybody else is a established driver within F4 that has completed a set number of races and are therefore no longer considered to be rookies. So it's very important to note that there is two different championships in one. You've got the international F4 Spanish Championship tally, but you've also got the Rookie Championship. And that does look as though we're going to have potentially two different champions if Chiara Malazzari can stay in front of Mattia Colnaghi. But if Colnaghi gets into the lead of the overall championship, then we're going to have the same man win both the overall and rookie crowns in 2024. So let's see how it continues. We've got 13 minutes left, and now Mattia Colnaghi does look like he's got the measure of Chiara Malazzari. It's all been about tyre management at this point, just trying to keep everything together. But naturally, of course, it's not easy when you're in the rhythm and you're certainly trying to find that little bit of extra pace in the car. So certainly for our man up at the sharp end of the field, Mattia Colnaghi, all the pressure's on him to try and get that gap down between himself and Chiara Malazzari. Malazzari's done an amazing job from 5th on the grid to go up to P2. But it's definitely looking like a very exciting challenge for the contenders. Now, Yaboyeza on YouTube has stated it seems like there's no DRS in these particular cars. You're absolutely right. There is no DRS or drag reduction system in F4. That only really creeps in by the time you step up to the next rung of the ladder, which is Eurocup 3. That's the race after this one. And there is a championship fight going on there as well, with 3 drivers still fighting to become champion. Javier Segurera, Christian Ho and Bruno Del Pino. That'll be the race after this one, of course. So there are no DRS flaps in F4. This is the very first single-seater racing car that drivers get into when they have left the world of international karting, or even regional karting. Not all of them have come through the FIA karting world. Some of them have just stuck to their domestic championships. Yellow flags out on the course, so somebody is losing ground. I've got a feeling we've had an incident between Reed, Businelos and Hideg, because all 3 drivers... Oh, yes, we have. Look at that. Big damage. 2 cars at least in the gravel. One with big damage to the rear quarter. One's missing a rear wing. That's definitely going to be a safety car. That's going to bunch up the field again. So we've got 3 drivers involved in that one. And there you go, safety car has been called. So that is inevitable, unfortunately, when you've had an accident like that. So 2 cars off the road, safety car called for the second time. We had an incident for Gabriel Gomez initially. René Lammers has brought it into the pits to retire. And now we've got 2 cars off the racetrack together. And interestingly, Hideg, Reed and Businelos were involved. So Hideg has dropped positions but manages to keep going. It's Lenny Reed of the Monlau Competition squad and the road-in driver Peter Businelos that have ended up in the gravel and out of the race. I wonder if we're going to get a replay of that or not. Difficult to know if it's going to be a little bit more clear-cut as to what happened out there. Now, Maxim Kitsios wants to know, are all the races time-based, or is this one different? That's a very good question, actually, because in the F4 championships, every different F4 championship has slightly differing regulations. It's not like football, where everybody plays the same game with the same rules the same way in every part of the world. Even the individual F4 championships actually have different rules to each other. It's not all a standard set. It all depends on how that national federation continues to progress and how they decide to write the regulations. So on this occasion in the Spanish F4 Championship, we've got 3 different races in the weekend. The first and third races are 30 minutes plus 1 lap in duration, and that has the same point scoring system as Formula 1, so 25 points for the win, 18 for second and 15 for third and so on, all the way down to 1 point for 10th position. The shorter race is race 2. That's only 25 minutes plus the additional lap, and that is 9 drivers scoring points. It's 18 points for the win, 15 for second, 12 for third, all the way down to 1 point for 9th position. Lucas Flusha is in the pits. So Lucas Flusha is in pit lane. That is not good news. So Lucas Flusha definitely with some difficulties in this race, just like we saw René Lammers coming into the pits. Now we've got the same problem for Lucas Flusha. Now that would have promoted Maciej Gladish up into the points, but James Igotzi, the Florida-based driver in the Red Bull Junior program, he has got ahead of Maciej Gladish somewhere. So difficult there, I'm afraid, as the wreckage of the Monlau Competition car of Lenny Reed is being recovered. Peter Businelos' car to the far right also being recovered for the road-in team. Loving these questions, by the way. Great to see everybody getting involved and asking what's going on in the Spanish F4 Championship finale. Noni Fitzgerald wants to know how many females are racing. Well, we've had several in Spanish F4 over the course of the season. For this weekend's finale, we have just the 1 driver, and that is the Australian Joanne Ciconti, who is currently running in 22nd position of the 31 drivers that are still circulating, if we count Lucas Flusha, who I think has gone back out onto the circuit again. So, fascinating situation. Right, Chap Toxic is another great question. This is the $1 million question, very nearly. As an American, theoretically, how much would need to be invested to get into this sport independently? Oh, I think it very much depends on how you want to go about it, Chap Toxic. If you're American, then obviously the natural route is to go through the regional karting championships, depending on which state you're in. You can either look at things like Miami West or Miami East, depending on what side of the coast you're on, and then start to look at SCUSA, the Superkarts USA. That's how a lot of the drivers in American motorsport work their way up the ladder. And you can either choose to stay domestic in American motor racing through the single-seater ladder there. There is an F4 championship in America, or you can decide to up sticks and emigrate to Europe, as many American drivers have over the past few years, none the least of whom, of course, was Logan Sargent, who was most recently a Formula 1 driver for the Williams team before being dropped mid-season this year. And of course, you've also got to take into consideration Jack Crawford, who was part of the Red Bull fold for quite some time until just becoming recently a reserve driver in the FIA Formula E Championship. But it really would be a sensational battle for all of the contenders to see more Americans get into the sport at European level. Well, seeing as how we're behind the safety car, Khaled Kleb's request is not an unreasonable one. He would appreciate knowing the status of the top 10 drivers in the season so far. That's a reasonable request. Chiano Alazari is the championship leader coming into this race. 239 points to the good, 11 clear of Mattia Kolnagi. Third in the championship is Maciej Gladish, who is currently running in 11th position, 1 place out of the championship points. He has 180 points, and this race effectively is where his championship fight could end unless he manages to work his way back into a decent points-paying position. But but he has been a great racer over the course of this weekend. Then there's Juan Cota, who won all 3 races at Valencia earlier this year. He's in 4th in the championship, 6th in the race. And Ernesto Rivera, 5th in the championship, 3rd in this race, so he's got a chance to catch up to Juan Cota a little bit. Thomas Strauven, who is 6th in the championship, is not racing this weekend. He's obviously got other things to do this weekend. Nor, by the way, is the Sri Lankan talent Yavan David, who most recently went and competed in Euro Formula Open and won at Monza, in fact, the first ever Sri Lankan to win an international single-seater competition. They're working on something else this weekend, so he's not competing. Lucas Fluscher is 7th in the championship, but he's just come into the pits under safety car, so now dropped to the back of the field, so no points for him in this particular race. He's 3 points ahead of James Igotzi, who is set for 1 point in this race for 10th position. So he's not going to lose his place in the championship unless Igotzi can get into 8th place, which would be enough for 4 points. Griffin Peebles, who is the Formula Winter Series champion, he's 4th in this race, but 9th in the championship on 87 points. And then Jan Petrovsky, who is currently P5, is 10th in the championship standings on 70 points, 12 points ahead of Nathan Ty, who is in 7th position. And as Yaboyeza points out, it's a long way to be an F1 driver. Yes, it is. It does take a long journey. These guys are essentially on the 2nd step of the ladder. The first step is karting, which you can pretty much do at any level you choose to do it. You can stay purely at your national level of motorsport. You can go regional. You can go international if you want to go FIA karting, or you can basically go whichever way you want. Oliver Behrman is a fine case and example of a driver who didn't go through FIA karting and now is going to be in Formula One next year with the Haas F1 team, having made his debut for Ferrari earlier in the year. So you can do it without going to the FIA karting if you wish to. So it could be an interesting one for all of the contenders out there. And TWDXL Lando points out, congratulations to Juan Cota for his gold medal recently in the FIA Motorsport Games. Indeed. And once again, proof that he is the ultimate king of Valencia, because obviously the Motorsport Games took place on the circuit Ricardo Tormo, where he triumphed 3 times in the season, and he made it a crucial victory in the gold medal race. Great performance from Juan Cota to stamp his authority on that particular circuit. We can see the recovery crew still going to work and still not finished yet, so we're under safety car for a little while longer. 4 minutes left of the race, so we may finish under safety car. It is going to be a little bit more interesting. Right, Woofy asks, how many cars can each team enter? As far as I'm aware, and I haven't read the regulation in the Blue Book recently, but as far as I'm aware, it's no more than 4 that are allowed to compete in Spanish F4 per team. I think it's only 4, but there are teams that obviously have more than that, so they've had to create a satellite team, which is basically a secondary team. MP has one, I'm fairly sure Campos has one, and I think there's talk of an extension of the teams. A couple of other teams want to run 5 or 6 drivers, so they're going to have to create a secondary team. Now, that obviously means that you've got to be very careful about who you put in each team, and that is obviously down to negotiations between sponsors, between racing academies, all sorts of different things. So it's going to be an interesting balancing act as to how they go about it. Mohammed Habib asks, is Campos Racing basically the Red Bull Junior team? I don't want to be flippant, but the short answer to that question is yes and no. It's not quite as easy to describe as that, because Campos has an arrangement with several of the Red Bull stable, but not all of the Red Bull stables. So yes, they do have a bit of a Red Bull alliance, but it's not an official one, as it were. It's not like Campos is the official Red Bull junior team, because Red Bull has such a presence in the junior categories all over the world. So tricky situation. I know that many of you are commenting that this is currently the longest safety car period that we've seen for quite a while. I would agree with that, but obviously the nature of the incident that we're cleaning up of Lenny Reed and Peter Buzanelos is quite a difficult one, because they're in a quite precarious position where they are at that particular part of the course. It was quite heavily embedded in the gravel, and it's not a natural position for the recovery truck to be. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how it all plays out. But look, the safety car is trying to back up the field quite early. Now, the reason for that, why the safety car is going slowly, is it's trying to give us as much of a green flag condition as humanly possible. The Toyota Supra safety car here is trying to back up the pack so that we've got a good restart, but also trying to give the safety team, the recovery trucks, a chance to get back into their original inset position. If we start the next lap, then we're not going to get any green flag racing in at all. If we back up the pack a little bit more efficiently, then we may get 2 potential green flag racing laps. So that's why they're backing up the pack a little bit here and going quite slowly. The leader, Mattia Colnaghi, and the second place man, Chiara Alazzari, probably aren't particularly happy about it because it doesn't help them to warm the tyres up. But there's the reason why. Safety car in this lap. So we should get ourselves 2 green flag laps of racing as a result of backing up the pack a little bit more efficiently. So let's see how it all continues when we get started again. Look at Chiara Alazzari practically spitting the exhaust fumes of Mattia Colnaghi. He's going to drop the hammer any moment now. If Alazzari can respond on the restart, he might be able to get ahead. Just 2 laps to go. Mattia Colnaghi is going to wait till after this right-hander. Look how much pressure Alazzari's putting on him on the restart. As Colnaghi drops the hammer, here we go. And Alazzari was ready for him. So this is going to be a straight fight now between the championship contenders as Alazzari drifts out wide going into the final corner. But Colnaghi gets a good start. Alazzari gets a good start. And for the last time in this race, we go green, 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 green. Over the start-finish line, Colnaghi immediately trying to break the toe of Alazzari. Then Rivera, Peebles, Pastrovsky, Kota, Tai, Tarmanichko, Cardenas, Egozzi, Gladish, Gerhardt and Elfagali. Into turn 1. Good start from Colnaghi, better than it was last time. Not under as much pressure as he was from Chiara Alazzari as the time ticks down to 0. But we've still got an additional lap to run as running wide there. That is Jan Pastrovsky, who misses his point, as too does Enzo Tarmanichko. They managed to recover, but they've lost a bit of time as a result of it. So when it all gets recovered and put back into position, Pastrovsky is now behind Tarmanichko and Tai. As here comes Griffin Peebles. Peebles is going to try and get side by side with the Mexican Ernesto Rivera for 3rd position. Yellow flags as Peebles tries to go right round the outside of Rivera in turn 5. That's brave. He decides against it. The yellow flag is brief. It looks as though we've had somebody drop down the order. Trying to make out who it is that's lost a bit of time there. We've had yellow flags, but the race has continued regardless. So it looks like somebody went off the road and then recovered again. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Juan Cota, who finds himself down in 18th place now behind Renault Franco. In fact, Egozzi is 9th and Gladish is 10th, so that would seem to tally as Juan Cota is now down to 18th. Meanwhile, Hudson Schwartz has gone into 12th position ahead of Chris Elfagali, the Lebanese driver. So some good battles all the way through, but look at the pace that Mattia Colnaghi has been able to find on the penultimate lap ahead of Chiara Alazzari. He's been able to pull a second clear, and now we've got a showdown in the final 2 races of the championship. If it stays like this, the fight between Colnaghi and Alazzari, the gap between them is going to be just 4 points going into the final 2 races of the year. It's going to be a showdown for the ages in the F4 Spanish Championship. Last lap, here we go. Peebles has got Rivera on a breakaway. He might have an opportunity. So let's see if it continues from Griffin Peebles, looking really hungry here behind Ernesto Rivera. Tarmanichko P5, Pastrovsky, Cardenas, Egozzi and Maciej Gladish, who has fought his way from 15th on the grid to P10. Good charge forward from the pole, but it's not going to be enough, sadly, to keep his championship fight intact. But he's certainly been a monstrous rookie this year. Certainly a force to be reckoned with on more than one occasion. His victories at Paul Ricard, very testament to the fact that he's still a major player, but he's still fighting to secure 3rd in the Drivers' Championship and be the vice rookie champion. But it's all going to be about the 2 men up front, Mattia Colnaghi and Chiara Alazzari, who will be separated by just 4 points going into tomorrow's 2 races if it stays like this. This is the most important race win of Mattia Colnaghi's season. Looks like Elfagali managed to get back ahead of the American Hudson Schwartz for 12th position. So that could be pretty critical, especially if a couple of drivers trip up in the final lap or so, as Jacoby's worked his way to the pit. So Alex Jacoby in trouble in the final couple of laps then. But it is going to be a victory for Mattia Colnaghi, and it couldn't have been timed better. With 2 races to go, he is going to take the championship lead down from 11 points to 4 points. Mattia Colnaghi wins race 1 at Catalonia. An amazing race from Colnaghi under all the pressure in the world. Chiara Alazzari Damaged limitation from 5th position back to P2. Great drive from him. Rivera hangs on to 3rd position. A good drive, a good solid effort from Maciej Gladish in 10th position, fighting back from 15th on the grid, but sadly, it is not enough for him to keep his title hopes alive, and he is now out of the fight to become champion overall. A real shame for him, because Maciej Gladish has been a real star this year, but so has the man on the top spot, Mattia Kolnagi. And that is win number 5. That is one more than his main championship rival, Keanu Alazari, who has won 4 times this year. Kolnagi has now won 5. There's Griffin Peebles, the man who just misses out on a podium finish. That'll be frustrating for the Australian. But he certainly gave it as good as he got out there. Good run as well from the young Thai driver, Enzo Tarnvanichkul, part of the Red Bull Junior fold, finishing up in 5th position ahead of Nathan Thai. Good points for Poland today. Jan Piotrowski in P7, ahead of Andres Cardenas, the Peruvian. And then James Zagotzi and Maciej Gladish coming home for the final 2 points-paying positions. Unfortunate for the gold medal winner in the FIA Motorsport Games, Juan Cota, drops to 16th at the end of the race then. Not where he wanted to be at all. So that definitely puts Juan Cota under some pressure championship-wise, as Ernesto Rivera, having got a 3rd position, now moves up to 141 points, just 4 points back from Juan Cota in the championship fight. Good effort from this man, Maciej Gladish, the Polish talent. 15th to 10th, he can be happy with his work there. He's raced hard and he's gained a lot of places, made his way back to the points positions. Regrettably though, he is now no longer in contention to win the F4 Spanish Championship in 2024. Very unfortunate, because he's been a real tiger all the way through this season. A really great racer. So now there are just 2 men to fight for the championship, and what a battle. With 2 races left and just over 50 points available, there are just 4 between Keanu Alazari, championship leader, and Mattia Kolnagi, the chaser. Boy, is this going to be an incredible end to the season. 2 races left and 4 points in it. Absolutely amazing. So as they continue on in fine style, Mattia Kolnagi continues, but it really will be a sensational charge for him going into tomorrow. Look at the condition of the tyres after half an hour, plus the additional lap. Even with the safety car, tyre degradation has been high here. But Mattia Kolnagi able to look after his tyres just a little bit better than Keanu Alazari at the end of the race there. Alazari can be content though from 5th to 2nd, damage limitation, but it's win number 5 for Mattia Kolnagi in 2024. And he's now just 4 points back from his chief rival. Look at that between the 2 title contenders. Sportsmanship to the last. Keanu Alazari may be beaten, but I tell you what, you'll never ever stop him being the true gentleman that he is. Delighted to say I've known both these men for quite some years through their karting and now into their F4. And it's a real mark of their character that they are sportsmen, even though they are rivals. And that will definitely do them in fine stead in the future. So there is Mattia Kolnagi celebrating win number 5 ahead of Keanu Alazari in 2nd position. 3rd place going the way of Ernesto Rivera ahead of Griffin Peebles and Ernesto Tarnvanichkul. 6th place for Nathan Thai of Great Britain ahead of Jan Piotrowski. Good points again for Griffin Corby Campos. Andres Cardenas coming home in 8th place behind them. Then James Zagotzi, and in 10th place, a great race from Maciej Gladish from 15th to 10th. It's not enough to keep the title alive, but he certainly proved his point today. 11th for Tim Gerhards in front of Chris Alfagali, and then Hudson Schwartz ahead of Ariel Elkin. Then we have Matas Reiber ahead of Juan Cota, Francisco Macedo and Renault Francote. Then Enzo Castillo and Ari Bansal, the Indian for Rodin Motorsport. Behind them, 21st goes to Joan Ciconti in front of Christian Cantu and Victor Dubshansky. Adam Hideg, 24th ahead of Lucas Flusha and Chase Fernandez. Oscar Wirtz down in 27th for Santalok. And then Theodor Bodenstein, Adam Alazari and Rafael Tedan. Problems at the end of the race for Alex Jacobi, and retirements for Lenny Reed, Peter Buzanelos, René Lammers, and TC Racing's Gabriel Gomez. A very dramatic end then for some, but a very exciting title battle that we've got now going into the final 2 races of the season. Let's look back over the highlights. Ernesto de Vera, so busy keeping Juan Cota at bay after following in the wheel tracks of Mattia Colnaghi. Cota taking to the grass, Rivera focusing on his mirrors. Thanks very much, says the two MP Motorsport drivers charging their way forward. Excellent racing, and look at how committed Chiano Elazzari was prepared to be to fight for this championship with Mattia Colnaghi. That was for starters. The main course will come tomorrow. But a great charge forward for Elazzari to work his way forward. Great wheel-to-wheel battles all the way through the field, even going down to the Monlau Competition squad, going wheel-to-wheel earlier in the race. Some good battles no matter where you look. Good to see Griffin Peebles really attacking Ernesto de Vera. But fantastic battles all the way through. A really exciting charge forward as the contenders continue in fine stead here. But the Spanish F4 Championship, of course, racing under a bit of a cloud this weekend, as we know. But our thoughts are with all of those members of the public affected by the DNAA in Valencia. We are obviously very much in our thoughts. There will be no podium ceremonies in our coverage this weekend in deference and as a mark of respect to those that have fallen. It is a very grave incident, and obviously over 200 sadly lost their lives in the incident. But we are still very much continuing on our tradition of Spanish motorsport with great pride and great achievement, standing with the people of Valencia. The first of our three races this weekend then coming to a close, and it's a great victory for Mattia Colnaghi, who gets the job done in fantastic fashion ahead of our man in second place, Chiano Elazzari. The championship fight between those two will now go into tomorrow. 2 races left of the championship and just 4 points in it between Mattia Colnaghi and Chiano Elazzari. We cannot wait to see how the racing continues tomorrow in the F4 Spanish Championship. Stick around because we've got Euro Cup 3 on the way, but the title fight is now very much head-to-head. Chiano Elazzari versus Mattia Colnaghi. From Jake Sanson and the whole team here at Catalunya, there's 2 great races to come tomorrow. Adios for now. Hasta mañana.